It was a combination of the material I had from my years as a server. I knew how to edit and film this stuff and comedically, the timing of all that. I knew how to do characters. I had the wigs and I finally had the time. And now we have TikTok brought us that direct line to your audience.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Burnt Chef Journal, a hospitality-specific podcast dedicated to challenging mental health stigma and conversations designed to inspire a new, healthier, happier, and more sustainable hospitality profession. The Burnt Chef Journal is proudly sponsored by Planday, the workforce management system that helps your business give a shift. From scheduling rotas ahead to tracking time and attendance, managing your team's careers to managing your budgets, Planday has everything you need to make your day work in one easy-to-use platform. Try it yourself with a 30-day free trial only at planday.com. Get your shift together with Planday.
This week, I'm incredibly excited. This has been over a year since the initial reach out to this guest, and I'm incredibly honored to have Drew Talbert on this week's episode. He's an American actor, comedian, and content creator renowned for his comedic sketches that humorously depict the intricacies of the restaurant industry and the service profession. Drawing from over 2 decades of experience as a waiter, Drew and his wife Andrea craft relatable content that resonates with both hospitality professionals and the general public. His popular series, centered around the fictional restaurant Bistro Huddy, showcases his talent in portraying multiple characters, bringing to life the daily challenges and humorous moments of restaurant life. Moving beyond content creation, Drew is an accomplished improv coach at the Groundlings Theatre and School in Los Angeles, where he imparts his expertise to both actors and non-actors. His work emphasizes the therapeutic benefits of improv, particularly in addressing social anxiety and fostering personal growth. Drew, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a bit of a lengthy intro, hey?
I just could listen to it all day. It's like, keep going.
Very generous.
High school plays, I want to hear. No, I'm just kidding.
It's almost like that valedictorian style speech, hey? But I hope it was all accurate and right.
Yeah, I don't currently teach at the Groundlings, but I was there for years doing that, and I still. Everything you said about how I feel about improv in a therapeutic way as well as comedic is still very true. And I love improv for that reason.
Well, I don't know if I am of the right ability to give you the king of improv crown, but you've been doing improv for a very long time. And for those who haven't heard of Bistro Huddy, what would you say to someone who hasn't ever experienced your content and the sort of improv that you do before?
I would say that they should imagine like a sitcom set in a restaurant where the episodes are around a minute long and everybody is played by me. So if they can imagine that, that's basically what it is. It didn't start that way, but it's turned into like an episodic like sitcom, set in a restaurant. So in the social media space, so bite-sized portions as opposed to like a 30-minute episode.
Yeah. So use of like short form content, which I guess both has blown up over the years and also recently been challenged for a brief 24 hours, which must have been terrifying with Biden-Trump changeover.
Oh, the TikTok. Yeah. Yeah, we're still there. We have like 60 days left until the pause is gone. And if it's not sold, if TikTok is not sold to an American, or I guess non-Chinese company within that time, it will go away from the US. So that's not over. He just granted a pause.
Oh, shit. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Well, we upload the same content to multiple platforms. So if if we're not on TikTok, you'll find it on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. So, and we have a lot of followers everywhere. And we have a Patreon where there's more content there. So we've tried to, like, from the get-go, try to not put all our eggs in the TikTok basket, because this has been under threat for years. Is what it is.
For sure. And I think recent counts, I did write it down. You had 5.4 million followers on TikTok and over 2 million now on YouTube, which is a hell of an accomplishment. So congrats on that.
Crazy.
Did you ever think that it would get that far?
I dreamed, my wife and I have been trying to do this content creation before, this all started. It was 2018. I committed to uploading every week to YouTube for this show I called the Curtis Creep Show. It was centered around this character I did called Curtis Creep. In hindsight, a very unappetizing character. And so there's no question why it didn't take off, but it did not. Like I had like 200 subscribers at the end of a year. But I learned a lot, and I always tell people, just dive in. If you have something you want to do, like on YouTube, that kind of thing, don't wait till you have everything perfect. Just start making stuff, because it was, on one hand, a failed year. On the other hand, I learned how to edit better. I learned all the little intricacies of uploading to YouTube and things. So when COVID hit and I started doing the TikTok stuff, and I was in a place to take advantage of the opportunity in a way I probably wouldn't have been if I hadn't have been trying so long in a less futile way.
It's an amazing form of creation and artistry. I remember years ago, Casey Neistat, I was addicted to his daily vlogs. And just looking at the camera angles and how he would re-record pieces from different angles. And you think, it's not until you step back and you look at it from that perspective, you go, fuck, the level of work that's involved in that is unreal.
Yeah, those kind of content creators, I really, hats off. They make it seem, that's the trick, right? It's making it feel easy. It's like Mr. Beast talks about the level of detail to a frame that he goes into to in his thumbnails, are just like, everything is like dialed in to the extreme, like beyond what most people would ever want to do. But
it's do you talk about Mr. Beast? Obviously, 2 content creators, massive followers, and the top 5%. Are you known on a personal level to each other, or is
Mr. Beast?
Yeah.
No. Oh, no. Well, one of his accounts reached out like over a year ago. We're like, hey, we're interested in including you on this thing. I forget what it was that we're going to use a bunch of creators. And then I was like, and then nothing came of it. That's the closest I've ever been to a Mr. Beast sighting. But no, I'm not in his stratosphere.
Not yet.
Right. I don't know. Man, I don't have designs on that. Very happy with my little cottage industry with my wife here.
Well, talking about then everything that you do now is from this series, and this long-going series is based around a restaurant. So you were in the restaurant trade for 22 years in total.
The server,
yeah. So first and foremost, what was your personal experience like with working for that period of time? That's a lengthy period within the service profession.
Yeah, it started as like a summer job as a busboy at a restaurant in high school, and then in college I would work as a waiter, a server during the summers, and then like weekends during college. And like a lot of people, I thought, oh, this is just something until I start my real career or whatever. But I started to really. In college, I switched to really going for it in terms of actor, writer. I wanted to be a film auteur in a way. If you go back to the 90s, which some of your listeners are that old, it was indie films. It was not the time of content creation. It was the time of indie filmmakers and the film auteur. That's what we all wanted to be. We wanted to be the next Coen brothers, the next Tarantino and the like. And that was my thinking. And so I would wait tables while I was pursuing that stuff in Nashville, Tennessee, where I'm from, and Los Angeles. And within the 22 plus years, I was a server at a wide range of restaurants. And it slowly became, more and more, that's just what I was, because the acting, the filmmaking had not really taken off. I had some fun little moments here and there, but I had to look at myself in the mirror and be like, I'm a server. But it was fine dining to casual. I worked at a casual restaurant in Malibu, California. I worked in Beverly Hills, upscale. I worked at the nicest restaurant in Nashville, Tennessee, or any state that touched it. It was very high end. And then I've worked at corporate, chains. I worked at one-offs, chef owned and operated spots. And the last chunk was 10 years at this one place in the valley in Los Angeles, California. That's where I met my wife, Andrea. But it was a chef owned and operated place. Those tend to be my favorite. Non-corporate chain. You're just like, there's a true family spirit about it. And you're working with the person who's making the decisions about the dish, and the owner is the chef. I like that setup personally.
Yeah. You can feel the passion, right? You can feel the drive, and you also feel like there's a purpose. It's not just you're making money for a stakeholder. You're working as a team to achieve a goal, right? Like you're part of
you do feel that. Yeah. And if the owner has a modicum of that as well, you'll feel like you're really a part of something in a cool way. And there was a point in time at that restaurant, which I'll say the name of it, if you're ever in LA, it's called the Boneyard Bistro. Great barbecue spot. And also Chef Aaron Robbins there was kind enough to let us take pictures. So any of the backgrounds you see for Bistro Huddy, that's the Boneyard Bistro. Because I shoot on green screen, and then I put those backgrounds behind. But that's all Boneyard. So if you want to feel like you're eating at Bistro Huddy, you need to go to the Boneyard Bistro. But yeah, great food, great bar. Like they were known for their craft beers and are known for that and that kind of thing. But yeah, there was a period in time there. There was about 4 years. The staff was amazing. Like if you went in there, we were all there for a long time. We all liked working together. We were friends outside of there. From the back of the house, the chefs, the cooks, the bussers, the bartenders, the servers, everyone was on point. The knowledge was amazing. Like there was guys that worked there that their collection of rare whiskeys at home would dwarf what most restaurants had. So you could ask any question about wine, and there was someone working that would come over and you'd have to shut them up because they could just rap about it for so long. And the customers felt that. So you'd come into this place. They still have a great staff now, but I'm just talking personally from my experience. There was this chunk of time where if anybody's worked in the restaurant business a long time, you may have hit this once or twice in your career where it's just like everybody's got your back. Everybody knows their stuff. There's no weak links. And it's just, you just flip the switch and the place hums and the guests feel it. So it's just tons of regulars. You walk in and there's just an energy about the place. And I've had that a couple times, and that was one of them.
I was only ever dabbling in hospitality. I'm not a creator, I'm not an artist, but I had a full-time career and I always had jobs in nightclubs and bars in the south coast of England, and I loved it. It was that buzz. But just listening to you talk then, I felt that oh god, yeah, I want to be back in that environment again. That's so cool. And that inspiration starts to kick back in. So you did 10 years at this place. Would you say that the tenure there was partly down to the fact that the team was just so in sync with each other and it was just good vibes, good flow in services?
Good vibes, great regulars. Food was really good. I was proud to sell it. That's a big part of it. It was convenient. It was near where I lived, and I met Andrea there. So we were both working there, and it was something we both enjoyed. It was a part of our lives. We were just intertwined with that place.
Yeah. It was part of your daily routine, right? And how did you, if this is a personal question, tell me to get lost, but how did you juggle holding the relationship whilst also working with your spouse as well? How did that work for you?
Yeah, some people don't like that. We loved it. But I found my person. I have to say, just on a personal level, I've hit the jackpot with her. If anybody, because I've had relationships that were not this, so I do know what it feels like. And there's no way to explain it. When you meet that person, it's just like I can't get enough of her. She can't get enough of me. So it's like we could work together, live together, and we never got tired of each other. So I'd rather work with her. Like we would both like, there was different parts of the restaurant. There was one area called the dining room, and they would take 2 servers, small place. And we loved it when it was the 2 of us in there. Cause like we were like, if you were sitting there, it wasn't just my table. It was our, like we would get each other's back in a way that was transcended most like working relationships.
Team, like a proper team, right?
Proper team. Yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. Yeah. And I think it's also it's quite rare. I'd love to hear from the audience now, whether or not you're working with your partner and it's actually working in a similar way. I've also worked with previous partners in the past. It's not gone as well.
It's bad. It really could mess up the job, like it gets pretty awkward.
Yeah, for sure. So how did your extensive experience of having such a long career within hospitality as a server translate into your improv and your artistry world? What did you first, you mentioned previously that this wasn't your first choice necessarily of characters, etc. But how did you end up coming back to restaurants?
So got on TikTok during quarantine, just like a lot of people. That's when TikTok really blew up. And I got on it because Andrea got on it and I started seeing some funny stuff. I'm like, oh, I'll download this. I have some time now. Because I was teaching and serving at the restaurant. So I had no time. We had a 1-year-old. Finally had time. So and I had all these wigs from my time at Groundlings because we do character-based improv there. If you ever are in LA, go see a Groundlings show and you'll see what I mean. And so I knew how to create characters and play them. I had the wigs and I just started doing like whatever idea I thought was funny. They weren't restaurant ideas. It'd be whatever. From a video about how it's annoying when you don't have a laundry basket and you're trying to pick up all your clothes and one sock falls, you pick that up and then this falls, you pick that up. So I would do videos like that. And they some minor successes on TikTok with that. And then I did this one video about the situation, which a lot of your listeners may be able to relate to, as a server where you're serving a family with a young child and the parents use the server to teach their child manners, but you're busy. So she's like, say thank you, because I brought the drinks. And I'm like, it's okay. Because the kid's just like staring at me. And they're like, no, wait, he'll say it. Say thank you. And so it's like this protracted anguish of like me, and you hear like, sir, excuse me, waiter, and I'm like, I'll just, and like, no, he'll say it. And so it was that thing. So I'm playing the mom with a wig, dress on, I'm playing the kid, I'm playing the server, and it blew up. It got like 1 million views, and I was just like, that was the moment I was like, oh, they like that. I'm going to do another server one, and they like that. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing because I have 2 decades of experience. I have so many ideas about this that we're just waiting for this moment, So it was a combination of the material I had from my years as a server. I knew how to edit and film this stuff and comedically, the timing of all that. I knew how to do characters. I had the wigs and I finally had the time. And now we have TikTok brought us that direct line to your audience. And so all of it just came together in that way. All the acting training, all the years of auditioning and trying and all this stuff, it just all came together in that way.
That's amazing. And so it caught you a little bit off guard then, hey?
Yeah, I was a little bit like, the channel started growing and we were getting excited and like, wow, where could this go? And so I started to dream a little bit there. I was like, and then I got some good advice, like, don't just do TikTok, upload it here and here and here too. And I was like, okay. So I started doing that. And then little by little, the other platforms would take off and it slowly became more of what it is now. But yeah, it was definitely took me by surprise.
It's phenomenal. I've watched your content in the past. I had obviously a bit of research for this. I was watching your content now. I'm not alone with this. I see the audience comments when you're looking at sort of your top rated comments, which is how well you portray the various different characters, and you just get locked in. For a second, you forget. You come to this moment of realization. You've been sat watching your face playing different characters for about 30 seconds. Then you realize that the women have all got beards. And you're like, fuck, yeah, it's the same person. Of course it is. You get so locked into the characters that you completely and utterly, it's like it transcends facial and bodily looks. It's incredible. And so, you know, big up to you for that, because that's not easy. That's hard work.
I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate it. I love seeing that. I think a lot of people just know they project onto me what they see. They're about, and I know it because there's fan art, you know, and they'll draw these beautiful versions of some of the female characters. I'm like, okay, they're definitely not seeing me anymore. Like this, like middle-aged father of two with a little bit of a gut, and then they'll draw this gorgeous Nicole or Amber, and I'm just like, oh, that's great. You know, I'm glad people are watching and they combine what they're seeing with their own imagination, and they just get carried away. And that's there's nothing better than that. That's what you want that's what you should want on any level of creation. You know, you should want the audience to be completely lost in the world. That's what anybody would want.
Yeah, that relatability as well. So first, let's look at the characters then. From a relatability point of view, how did you come up with those particular characters? I suppose the first question people want to know, is it modeled on people that you used to work with, or were these
some like the manager Terry is modeled completely after man. I even took the man's name. I don't know if the man's alive or dead, honestly. He was a manager for me years and years ago. He had that hair. He wore those. That is Terry. He was Southern. This was in Tennessee. So he was, the only difference is the real Terry was a chain smoker. But TikTok, if you can't have like a cigarette or anything, they push the video down. So I didn't bother with that part. But that's Terry. And then a lot of characters are just like amalgams of various people I've worked with. The chef, you know, I've worked for some very angry chefs that yelled a lot. So Joey, the chef, is kind of modeled after that, screaming at you under high stress, just no filter kind of thing. I've worked for chefs like that. And then Nicole, who is a lot of people's favorite, is mostly based off Andrea. But you have to understand, my wife, but in a really hyper exaggerated way. But the part of Andrea that's in Nicole is this thing I was fascinated by when I worked at Boneyard with her, because I couldn't believe it. Andrea was the hostess and server. She would do both. And there was an owner, the chef, Aaron Robbins, and Andrea was just a server and a hostess, but she kind of was like second in charge. And she just ran things in a way that was so hilarious to me. She would even talk to the owner, you know, and set him straight sometimes. But like in a very professional way, she managed the door and kept everybody in line. And you just felt it when you were with her. She just took nothing from anybody. Very like self-confident and like no BS, and would say stuff to people that most people maybe wouldn't. And she got away with it in this way that was just fascinated me. So Nicole's kind of based off her.
I have met people like that in the past, and it's often those who have been around the block. You know, they've been in the game for a while. They know the corners of the room. They know every intricate detail, what screws go under the tables, etc. And they have that. They exude that confidence that, I guess, from a psychology point of view, is that people will follow. People will follow people who know their shit, right?
That's right. They know their shit. They see the world in a different way than the rest of us. There's no fear. They have what someone asked Chapel Roan this after Grammys, because I saw a video of it. Like, where does this confidence come from? And she said, well, I have I forget how she phrased it, but she said, like, I've got walk away power. She's ready to walk away from things. Like, she's been poor, she's been wealthy, she's been all these things. And she's just so satisfied with who she is as a person that she could walk away from any offer, anything she's doing. She doesn't need it. She has walk away power. Thought that was interesting. I think Nicole got a little bit of.
If you're enjoying this week's episode, consider heading over to our website and supporting our ongoing work in destigmatizing mental illness and creating a healthier, happier, and more sustainable industry by purchasing some of our branded merchandise. We have a whole range of t-shirts, hoodies, chef's jackets, well-being journals, plus a whole host more available on worldwide dispatch. All funds raised from sales of these items go towards free-to-access e-learning content, as well as providing free support systems and help for those who may be experiencing difficulty with their mental health.
So I was quite unwell, which is why the Burnt Chef project started. I used to be a supplier to the trades, chefs specifically, but also mixologists as well from time to time. And when I was going through recovery, COVID hit, and what COVID taught me was I was watching, and at our time it was Boris Johnson stood up on stage in front of the world or in front of the UK audience going, COVID's not a problem. You don't have to worry about COVID. It's not a problem at all. And you could literally feel all the neighbors in the area go, oh, God, thank God for that. He said it's going to be okay. That's all right. And I suddenly realized at that moment I had an epiphany. And I was like, as human beings, we want almost the majority, I would say, want to be putting their trust and faith into someone that they can trust. And that level of autonomy to recognize the systems and to work beyond them, sometimes that level of insight doesn't come, whether that's through life-altering or changing events, etc. But it doesn't necessarily come to everyone at all time. And it's a rare quality to be able to walk away or to be able to go, it's fine, everything's in my own power.
Very rare. It's a superpower.
Yeah. For the negatives of COVID, there are positives such as this and perhaps those paradigm shifts and perception tilts. So you mentioned earlier about seeing things in detail and magnifying glass. How do you keep generating such engaging and new content? Because I mean, we've been in hospitality doing the work that we do for 6 years, and you start to almost create models. When you go into an organization, you're like, okay, we see what's happening here from the 100 businesses that we've worked with before or individuals. Everyone has a unique story, but you have a knack and an ability, both you and your wife, to be able to look at some granular details that perhaps people, like that sock dropping on the floor, that resonates. That's just a throwaway comment, but how do you keep generating that content? Do you have like a little black book? You've got a whole list of experiences that you've had that you're pulling from?
Yeah, we definitely keep a list. It's a very long list. So whenever an idea comes, I just jot it down and in the notes. And sometimes it comes from our own heads, a memory of something that happened. Sometimes it's watching other stuff. The one I posted today, I credited inspired by, because I saw a restaurant training channel talking about don't trauma bond with your tables. It was they train servers, and they were talking about when a server will commiserate with the table and throw the restaurant under the bus. Oh, I know, it's so cold in here. They're so stupid. I don't know why they do that. Yeah. And just to have this moment with to bond with the table, but the person was saying what you're doing is you're giving them a negative impression of the restaurant, blah, blah, blah. So I saw that and I was like, oh my God, that's a fun video. Let's do the Bistro Huddy take on it, So the one today is inspired by something I saw there, and I'll credit them. And then sometimes people write in their stories. This happened to me. I think it'd be a funny video. Maybe 1 out of 10 of them are useful, because the others might be funny, but they're just not relatable enough, or there's something in them that just doesn't work. And then every now and then one will be like, oh, so we'll credit the person and make a video version of that. But the other thing I'll say is we would have run out probably earlier, but drawing from what we wanted was like this to be more reliant on the characters and relationships. Because if you look at long-running sitcoms, the thing that everybody tunes in for is the characters, right? Friends or The Office. It's like the characters are what you want to see. And then obviously it's a sitcom, so they give them a situation of that week, and we see how all the characters react to it. That's what a sitcom is. So I knew if we could get people invested in the characters, and Nicole and Joey and Terry and all these people, then we could run forever, because then you're less reliant on a joke or whatever, and you can get into the relationships. So that's also what's helped with longevity. We've had long running little branches of trees that are more relationship driven, but we still try to keep it a sitcom. We don't get so far into the weeds with the drama. Some viewers would prefer that, honestly, but we still want it to just be a funny, lighthearted sitcom. But we do go into relationships, romances, and that kind of thing.
I watched one with Terry, who'd left his position, been replaced by Spencer. And Spencer was he was like, gonna cut after work drinks, we're gonna cut company perks. And it was a well-watched video, again, massive viewership, but there was a comment on there that was like 8,000 likes that said something about this sort of level of management, or this owner is always the reason why businesses get fucked, because they just don't understand how people work. And I found that quite interesting, and I started searching through the comments. And so I guess what you've done very well is you've created that sitcom that runs standing, because then the next highest rated comment was, "Oh, Terry's going to be back in the next episode, and this is how he's going to reintroduce himself." So you've done very, very well on that front. But sort of moving into improv and mental health, and I'll come back on to more your thoughts and feelings of the work that you've done in hospitality and the work you continue to do. You mentioned that improv can be beneficial for those struggling with social anxiety. For me, the thought of standing up in front of people doing improv brings about social anxiety. So can you just give a little bit more information about how that's been successful in your eyes?
Yes, it's one of my favorite things about teaching it and performing it. But I'll start it, just if you can remember one word, it's listening. That's the key to improv, and happens to be the key to getting out of your head in terms of anxiety, social anxiety, is listening. So most of us are in our head all the time. How are we being perceived when you meet someone, when you're with some other people? How are they seeing me? They're thinking about ourselves, and all that negative stuff surfaces. If you're truly listening to the other person, though, you can't do that. Like, you can't do both at the same time. You can't be in your head rattling off all your fears and anxieties if you're really locked in and listening to what someone else is saying. And just by coincidence, that's how good improv works. Bad improv is when you're in your head and you're thinking about, oh, am I going to say something clever? Will the audience like me or hate me? I'm going to come off so stupid. Why am I up here? But if you're doing that, you're not listening to your scene partner. And the way improv works is it is 1,000% collaborative, right? So it's the big difference between stand-up comedy and improv is you're in the moment, you get the suggestion from the audience, and then you become completely reliant on your scene partners if you're doing it right. So if I was in a scene with you, Kris, and we get the suggestion that we are folding paper airplanes or whatever, I'm going to look at you. It's eye contact, and I'm desperate to hear what your thoughts are, because I want to build off your ideas. I treasure your ideas in such a way, it's like I'm holding on to you like you're my life raft, And so, if I'm listening to you and your body language and everything, not just your words, I can't be worried about what I'm going to say. So if you have the first line and you label me as your uncle or whatever, Uncle Patrick, I get it now. The key is the really sharp lines of the play or whatever.
Sharp creases. Yeah.
That's a lot of That's a lot of information. What's that?
It's the sharp creases. I mean, years of origami.
So if you say that, I know I'm Uncle Patrick. You're my nephew. I know that you're grateful to some instruction I've just given you. And I know now the character to play. I know how, the relationship we have. I have all this information because I'm listening. And now my response is just going to be based off that. And it can just be a little bit. And so we just build together, Say like, oh, Johnny, I knew if you finally just did it my way, you'd get this. The problem is You never listen, whatever. We could build a scene
Yeah.
off that. I could be that kind of uncle. I could be a really grateful uncle. Oh, it's just so nice to have somebody who appreciates me, my instruction. I try, my wife does it, it could be that scene, whatever. But I'm just going to hear you and I'm going to base it off that. So that's why it works for social anxiety too, because I tell my students, like, don't just practice here in class or on stage. You can practice improv when you're ordering your coffee. If you're a server at your tables, you can practice improv by just take a deep breath, let go of any preconceived idea of what, and just listen to the person. And you'll have these amazing interactions with people, with your spouse, with your friends. You can practice. They don't have to know you're practicing, but what you're doing is you're like, I'm not going to worry about what I'm saying. I just want to hear what they're saying, and I'll just respond. So that's the lengthy answer, but it's that simple. And yet we're so hardwired the other way that it does take practice and time. It's simple, but it takes practice to do that. But it is the key. Listening is the key.
Bit of an obscure question for you, but what is it why do we as human beings feel such pressure to always talk rather than listen? And you made a good point about not just audibly listening, actively listening in terms of body language, in terms of even feeling undertones of certain words or phrases. Why is this a skill that we've sort of like left behind and we have to do in improv classes or in effective leadership training?
I don't know. I think we don't get taught this at home in schools. I think part of it's just we want to be seen as what? Smart, good looking. We want to, all these positive things. We just want to be seen that way. So we spend so much energy trying to become what would get that opinion from people. And social media doesn't help, probably, comparing ourselves to others and that kind of thing. But I think it's probably long before social media. And it's just funny because the harder you try to do that, you're pushing further away from what would actually do that. Think of the people that you admire the most. And probably a lot of them have figured this superpower out of listening and like making it more about the other person. Don't you love being with people that are really actively listening to you and like they respond in a way that shows that they actually heard what you said and those are our favorite people to be around. And yet we never make the leap to go, oh, I should do that. Maybe we don't know why, but some of the great leaders are that way. Some of the great, it's funny, you get to the top of some of these big companies and stuff. You expect the leader to be this scary whatever. And so many of them, people walk away saying the same thing. I couldn't believe it. They're this big whatever. And we're in this party. There's like 200 people there. And I felt like I was the only person in the room with them. Yeah. You hear that a lot. And that's because they figured this out. And it's shot them all the way to the top, listening and really connecting. It's a people game, in life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've got a visceral image of, that Japanese elder with the long white beard sat there on the stick, just listening and watching. And every so often he'll say 3 words and it will just change your perspective of everything. It's
oh yeah, that's true too. I didn't make that connection, but you're right. Yeah.
No, sorry, my brain fast.
The wise man on the mountain is just more or less a listener.
Yeah. It's the same with mental health advocacy, which is, it's not about what you say to individuals who are struggling with their mental health. In fact, it's about nothing. Nothing you've got to say is going to suddenly lift a depression or anxiety. Just being there and actually being present and actively listening and engaging and just almost, it's hard to convey, but being present, like actually giving yourself, your present, your essence to someone is more powerful than being able to come up with a sudden quick plan to be able to help with that.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe improv is the skills learned in improv could be what people need to be effective and empathic leaders. Hey.
Yeah. Well, the Groundlings gets hired to go do these team building workshops with major corporations all the time. improv is definitely a tool that's used in companies all the time for this exact reason.
My brain's swimming. I've got ideas. I'll jot this down and come back to them later. I'm conscious of time, and I promised that I would get you away at a reasonable time. So what I wanted to do is just talk to you very briefly about the oversight of where you see the hospitality sector, both from a front of house management, back of house perspective. You get the opportunity to see quite literally comments of millions of individuals on a regular basis. What are you feeling that the general feeling of hospitality is at this moment in time from those who are working within the sector?
It seems like it's pretty rough right now. COVID had a seismic shift, at least from what I'm seeing, and the friends I have that are still servers and that kind of thing. Customers got a little nastier.
Yeah.
What I'm saying. There's some real financial issues with a lot of restaurants, solvency, that's putting a lot of pressure. Just the cost, inflation, people's disposable income is not what it was, to just be able to go out and eat. Things are down. There's all kinds of challenges from what I'm seeing. I hate seeing that, but it's just a tough time in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And the restaurants, I feel like, are feeling it in particular, at least from what I'm seeing and feeling here in the States.
Yeah, I would say that's emulated in most places. Dubai is probably one of the exceptions to the rule because that place always seems busy. And
did you say Dubai?
Dubai, yeah.
They're doing all right, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, there's places everywhere that are still doing great, but I just wonder about on the edges.
Yeah, there's definitely a shift, and I think there's a skill gap shortage. But what a couple of your videos have really shown, especially the interview videos where you've got someone sat in front of you going, "Yeah, I really want this job." I think there was you were playing a boy who was chewing gum at the same time with his cap on backwards. He's like, yeah, cool man, cool, yeah, I'll take the job, yeah. Do you know anything? No. And they're like, fuck it, I'm desperate. You come and work for me.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of we need hands on deck at the moment, but I fear that almost implodes things in a little way, in the fact that it's a short-term win, but also a long-term pain if that individual hasn't got the time to develop their skills or to be trained effectively, etc. But I guess also from a positive perspective, a lot of your videos focus on, watch one with Terry trying to give sexual harassment training, and with the rubber doll, which over here in the UK, our laws have just changed now. So organizations have to take proactive measures to attack sexual harassment before it actually happens. And if they don't, the fines are like hefty. Have you seen that there's been a bit of a culture shift or a cultural shift when it comes down to attitudes on neurodiversity, on mental health, on things like sexual harassment? Are you starting to see a shift within the comments and the requests for content? I'll give you an example. So the sexual harassment will be like, this is commonplace, back of house, it's locked environments, people don't like it, they shouldn't be in the kitchen type thing. Right. Are you starting to see that, especially with the type of content? I guess your audience are early 20s, mid 20s. Would you say the majority? Or
I don't know. I don't know if I've seen, from my own experience, when I worked at corporate chains, sexual harassment was taken very seriously, even 15 years ago. And then when I worked in these small chef-owned operations, it was a running joke, Like, I remember we got a handbook and there was a sexual harassment thing we had to sign or whatever. But like, it was all a joke. Like, there was no HR department. You're working so tight, you're moving around. And it was like wild, the stuff that was said and done. I haven't done it now for 5 years. So I don't know from her firsthand experience what these smaller places are like now. But I know from personal experience, the smaller places are where it really is crazy what goes on and what's said and that kind of thing. So I don't know. I haven't seen in the comments, but I've seen in just around me, like there is more of a point of emphasis on respecting people's boundaries more. That just seems to be in the climate all around. we're going through another shift right now in the United States politically, where a lot of things have been reframed, shall I say. I don't know what that'll do for sexual harassment. It's more about diversity, and that kind of thing is being retextualized. I'm trying to be careful. I don't want to get political on here, but there's definitely like a shift. So I do have worries about what that'll do in terms of emboldening people who maybe would lean towards a level of disrespect in their day-to-day life and workplace environment. I don't want to see that, but I'm worried about that more. I did like it more when everybody seemed to be getting on the same page of like, hey, there's some things we need to respect about each other, and in a way that I liked, but we'll see.
Yeah, bold statements from the new American president, but also completely dismissive of human life, which is just fucked on so many levels. Is it something that I know you want to try and avoid the political side of things, but is that something that you think at some stage you might highlight in some of your episodes in tongue-in-cheek or even directly?
We don't really address stuff overtly political, but what we try to do is show two things. We try to show reality, because to be relatable, we try to show it truthfully. But we do try to show people from different walks of life. Like we have these two very popular characters are Southern, quote unquote, rednecks. That's how my people, my dad's side of the family, if you will, that I know very well, interacting because he's out in LA doing a job. So they live temporarily, quote unquote, temporarily in LA. But, we have them, and then we have, the chef is from New York, and we have servers from LA, and we have all these people existing together. And we're hoping a takeaway from it is like, hey, we can jokingly like have conflicts about minor things, but people can exist together. Because in my opinion, the dream is like to get to a place where we can respect each other enough to exist in the same space again. Everything's so divided now. So more and more I'd like to show we have characters that are LGBTQ, I don't play other races, obviously, because I'd be canceled immediately, and I don't have the desire to do that. But whatever I can do from a way to show diversity in terms of backgrounds of people and how they can have like minor quibbles for comedy. But the takeaway is, but look, they live in the same space. They're getting along. They're living a healthy life all together in this one space. That's what we like to show.
And I think that's what's so brilliant about hospitality, right? Largely, there are still some imbalances when it comes down to some physical disabilities, for example. Largely, hospitality is fairly all-encompassing profession. You come from any walk of life, any background. Your characters portray it brilliantly. They've all come from different backgrounds, different skill levels, different experiences.
And we serve everyone, Yeah. Like if you're a chef, you're cooking for everyone. You're nourishing everyone. And if you're a server, you serve whoever comes and sits at your table. And there's a certain magic about that. There's a certain nobility about this profession, because you take all the stuff that we make fun of in our videos, all the ha-ha, but at the end of the day, you have people creating food and serving food to people from all walks of life. And that's great. There's something real about that. There's something very satisfying about that, or should be.
Moments in history, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Drew, we've come to the end of our time. I don't want to keep you, as I appreciate you're a very busy man. So firstly, thank you for joining us and joining myself. Thank you for also shouting out Boneyard Bistro, who I'm sure if there are people in the local area are going to be coming in thick and fast. And any final key takeaways for our listeners around the globe at this moment in time?
I don't have anything else I that's on my mind to add. It's been a pleasure being here, getting to meet you, talk to you. And I just really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I want to encourage you to just keep it up. It's so vital, and we all appreciate it.
Thanks, man. It's similarly to your journey, starting off with just photos in the south coast of England, and then standing up one day and going, we're going to support 72 million people worldwide, and let's start making a start now. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Very fulfilling, not without challenges. So we're very early on our long road, but I appreciate the sentiment and thank you very much. And I will draw this week's podcast to a close. Drew, thank you for joining me, and guys, we'll see you again next week.
All right, thank you.